What's up, guys? Today I'm talking about books that for one reason or another I gave up on in the past, but that I will be restarting and finishing this time. And there are some long ones here. These are my top 10 books that I'll be giving another go. Number 1, End of Watch by Stephen King. This is the third and final installment in the Bill Hodges trilogy, which is a police detective mystery type series with a bit of a supernatural twist. In End of Watch, Bill Hodges, a retired detective, takes on Brady Hartsfield, a serial killer who just won't seem to die. Now, I really liked the first installment in this trilogy, Mr. Mercedes. It was a great read. The second installment in the trilogy, Finders Keepers, I thought was a decent read, and I gave up on End of Watch after making it more than halfway through. I feel that in this final part of this trilogy, it gets a little too supernatural, a little silly and hard to believe. However, because I'm reading every Stephen King book, I have to complete this, so I will be restarting it and finishing it this time around. Number 2, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is the first piece in an epic fantasy series that so many readers hold beloved in their hearts. It's about a woman named Moraine and some companions of hers that go on a long journey in an attempt to halt the advance of evil and save the world in a kind of Lord of the Rings fashion. I completed exactly half of this novel, 400 pages, and I felt the atmosphere was very well done, and I thought the characters were quite grand as well. I could sense an epic journey about to play out before my very eyes, but it was lacking in the pacing department for me, and I just could not finish it at the time. Now, I know that this is a common complaint with this series, that The Eye of the World is a slow start, and that the story really picks up with book number 2, The Great Hunt. I want the experience of this great fantasy epic. I must read this series, and I'm committed to giving it another go. Number 3, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This one is about a man named Edmond Dantes who is falsely accused of and convicted of a crime. Now, he spends some time in prison, and while he's incarcerated there, he finds out about a buried treasure. He comes up with a plan to break out of the prison, find the treasure, and seek out vengeance and revenge upon the person who falsely locked him up. I felt that this novel started very well. Dumas was one hell of a writer. It's no surprise this is as popular a novel as it is. However, the main storyline starts to branch off in many different directions, and because of the length of the book, when I sat it down, it was because I was feeling a bit overwhelmed. Now, because I've tried this book in the past, I have a new perspective. I know what I'm getting into this time, a story with many different character arcs, and I think I'll be more likely to enjoy it this time around. This is one of the greatest novels ever written, and I'm committed to finishing it this time. Number 4 on my list, The Angel of Darkness by Caleb Carr. This is the second installment in the historical Laszlo Kreisler series, where our group of detectives, led by the alienist or the psychiatrist, Dr. Laszlo Kreisler, go on the hunt for another serial-killing child murderer in 1897's New York City. This is the sequel to The Alienist, which I really enjoyed and which has blown up over the last several years because of the hit television program that it inspired. This is my favorite detective series, not only because of the personalities of the characters that I absolutely love, but I like the way that they use psychological profiling to try to catch the killers. Now, I gave up on this one about halfway through because I made the mistake of starting it too soon after I finished The Alienist, and I got a little bit burnt out on the storyline. However, it's been about 6 months since I attempted this, and because I've gotten some fresh air, I have a feeling that this is going to be a fun read for me, and I cannot wait to cover it here on the channel. Number 5, Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. This is the third installment in one of my favorite series, the Stormlight Archive, and it follows the Knights Radiant as they deal with the Voidbringers and the fact that the enemy Parshendi have summoned the violent Everstorm. I read over 700 pages of this novel before I set it down, but it wasn't because I don't love the storyline. This is one of the most mature and phenomenal stories that I've ever read. It truly has a piece of my heart, does the Stormlight Archive. But like the mistake I made with The Angel of Darkness, starting it too soon after I finished The Alienist, I started Oathbringer too soon after I finished the previous installment in the Stormlight Archive, Words of Radiance. I know better now. I'm going to start taking breaks between series installments. I'm a big fan of the Stormlight Archive. Brandon Sanderson has single-handedly taken epic fantasy to the next level. He's a literary genius of the highest magnitude and a writer of the highest achievable skill level. I'm looking forward to restarting Oathbringer, finishing it this time, and presumably reading everything that Brandon Sanderson has ever authored. Number 6 is a little big novel called Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Moby Dick, in the eyes of many, is the greatest novel ever authored. It's about the captain of a ship named Ahab and his obsession with catching his arch nemesis, a whale named Moby Dick. I've tried reading this twice, and I've given up both times shortly before they board the ship, which means that I still haven't met Ahab, and I still haven't met Moby Dick. I felt that the language was very dated, and that made it kind of hard for me to really get into and enjoy this one. However, this is a very important book. It's one of the most popular classics of all time, and like with The Count of Monte Cristo, I have a new perspective now. I know what I'm getting into with Moby Dick, and I feel that that new perspective and my desire to finish this book will help me to complete it this time around. Number 7 on my list, Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. Back in 2009, I picked this book up basically at random when I was at a library, and I sat reading it the entire day and nearly finished it in one sitting. I remember just being enthralled by this one. It's about a man named Charlie who is mentally handicapped. He has a very low IQ, and some scientists help him. They take him in and perform a surgery on his brain, a surgery that increases his IQ and mental capabilities. This is a very beautiful, poetic, dramatic, heartfelt type story, and for the life of me, I can't remember what prevented me from finishing it. Something must have come up in my life, and for all these years, I've been troubled by the fact that I did not get to the end of Charlie's story. Flowers for Algernon is an incredible story, a lovely drama, and I know that I'm going to feel warm and fuzzy inside when I get back to this one. Number 8 on my list is a novel you might have heard of. It's called Dune by Frank Herbert. Everyone seems to love Dune. You, dear viewer, if you've read the novel, you probably liked it. However, it seemed dated to me, and that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes I specifically pick up a classic because I want dated, but Dune just didn't work for me. This one is a classic science fiction / fantasy blend about a boy named Paul, whose family accepts the stewardship of the planet Arrakis, and Paul may be the savior that everyone's been waiting for. I admit, I read less than 100 pages before I sat this one down, and my mind has wondered what I might have thought of it had I went just a little bit further. Now, I'm not just picking this back up at random. I feel that I really might like it if I give it a chance, and if I enjoy it as much as I hope to, I might read all the books in this series and cover them on the channel very soon. Number 9, The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. Earlier this year, I was in a reading slump. I just couldn't get into a book no matter what it was, so it was kind of a bad time for me to purchase the box set of Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy. I read about 100 pages before I sat The Blade Itself down and took a break from reading for a while, but from what I did read, this one is about some different groups of people and some different countries that are warring with one another in a medieval type atmosphere. I really liked the characters here. They're absolutely phenomenal. Logan Ninefingers, especially Glocta and his practicals. It wasn't that this was a bad story for me, that I set it down. It was because I just wasn't in the mood for reading at the time. Now that I'm through my reading slump and back into the swing of things, I have a feeling that I'm going to devour these 3 novels and make quite a big deal out of them here on The Love of Reading. And finally, guys, number 10 on my list, a book that I know I'm going to enjoy once I start it back over. It's called The 3 Body Problem by Liu Cixin. After I finished up the great novel Absolution Gap by Alastair Reynolds, I was desperate for another hard science fiction novel and series, so I picked up The 3 Body Problem based on its rave reviews. I made a mistake though. What I really wanted at that time was another Alastair Reynolds novel, and because Liu's style is different, it just didn't work for me in that moment. This Hugo Award-winning novel is set against the backdrop of China's Cultural Revolution, and in it, a secret Chinese military project sends signals out into outer space trying to establish contact with an alien race. There's so much going on in this novel that I can't really describe the plot here, but the craziest stuff happens, and it's a very scientifically inspired and awe-inspiring type story. A lot of very interesting scientific ideas come up in this, especially in the way of physics, but I just wasn't in the mood for this exact type of story when I started it. But when the mood strikes me, and I expect it will happen very soon, I know that I'm going to really enjoy this one. And there you have it, friends. These are 10 books that I gave up on in the past, but that I also have a vested interest in returning to, starting anew and finishing this time. And of course, I will be covering all of the books that I mentioned here on the channel very soon. You can subscribe if it please you. All of the content on my channel here is about books, and please leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I will see you next time.